to refuse the obligations of international leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems is as unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past.
John McCain caught a lot of people's attention last night with that remark while accepting the Liberty Medal in Philadelphia. Now, it's been interpreted as a jab at President Trump, and he certainly took it that way.
You heard what he said yesterday, Senator McCain.
Yeah, well, I hear it, and people have to be careful because at some point I fight back.
Yeah.
You know, I'm being very nice. I'm being very, very nice. But at some point I fight back, and it won't be pretty.
That sure got his ire. So what does the senator think about the warning? Fox News caught up with him.
I don't comment on what the president says. I comment on what he does. And I will say that I have faced some pretty tough adversaries in the past. I'm not interested in confronting the president. I'm interested in working with the president.
So, Kimberly, the heart and soul of what Senator McCain was lamenting was that the United States had occupied a leadership role in the world for most of the last century, and he sees us as withdrawing in terms of climate accords or the Iran deal or trade deals. What do you think?
I guess that's what he thinks. I'm not sure exactly in terms of the comments that he just made. But, I mean, I personally don't see it that way. I don't see it that we're withdrawing. I think we still maintain a strong leadership position in the world. People know they can count on the United States. No country is more generous in terms of times of tragedy or natural disasters, in terms of providing humanitarian relief around the world, providing military support in the face of brutal regimes and dictatorships. So I see the United States still standing up and taking ownership for those situations. As it relates to President Trump, yes, he has used, themes of patriotism and uniting the country. And I guess if you have an idea about him that's, one way or the other, you can kind of like say, well, this is what he means by that, or this is what he means. What I think is that he's trying to honor his campaign promises. He was elected, and he wants to do the things that he promised the hard-working men and women. And one of those things was that he wouldn't do bad deals. And he said from the beginning of the campaign that the Iran deal was a bad deal. And he said that the climate deal was a bad deal in terms of the large amount of money that the United States was having to proffer forward and, getting what, kind of return on. So that, I think, he's being consistent with what his campaign message was.
Jesse, it looked like, clearly he's saying, history has assigned to the ash heaps this kind of what he called half-baked nationalism, populism.
Well, I love John McCain, but he can be a real pain to Republican presidents. I know Dana can agree. He was a little bit of a thorn in George W. Bush's side. I voted against the Bush tax cuts. Was very, I would say, irritating when it came to waterboarding for President Bush. The Iraq War was not always very supportive, but he helped, turn that around with the surge support. Listen, he's already sunk Obamacare repeal. He's probably going to vote against the Trump tax reform package. I do like what he said, though. I like how he said, I'm not going to comment on what Trump says. I'm going to comment on what Trump does. I wish a lot of senators would do that, including Bob Corker, including Senator Graham. I think that's good advice for a lot of Republican senators.
Dana, what struck me was nationalism, especially after the Austrian elections this past weekend, after what we've seen happen in Germany, after Brexit. It seems to almost be global. And here you see Senator McCain, almost in a valedictory, saying, this is not the way the world should be going.
Yeah, and I think that when you give a speech like that Senator McCain did, you almost have to understand, what's going to happen in the morning. What are people going to take away from this? And if it requires further explanation, then you probably should have put more of that in your speech. So when I interviewed Condi Rice last week at the Bush Center, she said she's concerned about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And it's nationalism, populism, the 2 other isms. But it's basically this whole thing that it's not necessarily just President Trump's campaign promises. It's that there's a global movement around the world to withdraw. That might be better for the American interest when it comes to President Trump, but John McCain, from where he comes from and based on his experience, he sees it differently, and he has never been shy about saying what he thinks.
Kennedy, do you see us as becoming isolationist under President Trump?
Oh, that was the other one. Isolationism?
No, I would love for us to
We'll
be
get the rest of them.
non-interventionist. You know, if that were actually the case, I would delight in that.
She's a libertarian.
I think, amen. But I think what Senator McCain was saying, I think it was more of a direct attack on Steve Bannon, who's coming after Republican senators, like his counterpart in Arizona, Jeff Flake, who's very much in trouble. And I think Senator McCain is on the defensive for some of the people that he serves with.
All right. One more thing.